Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of Doctor Who. It was called Rogue. And as the episode starts, it's 1813 in Bath, England, and a pair of lords quarrel over one having recently dishonored the other, when one of them turns out to be not quite who they seem to be, and then quite violently takes on the identity of the other, as he seems more interesting, leaving a withered corpse behind. Later, at a gala, the Doctor and Ruby are dancing, and Ruby mentions Bridgerton, which is funny because it's a very Bridgerton scenario, and in fact, the people who worked on Bridgerton worked on this episode. Anyway, as Ruby is invited away from the Doctor with the lady who is throwing the gala, Duchess Pemberton, played by Indira Varna from Torchwood, her psychic earrings pick up some sonar interference. So the Doctor scans for the source of the sonar signal with his sonic and discovers that it would seem to be coming from the direction of a particular gentleman. Ruby, meanwhile, is introduced to the being that took over the identity of the man from earlier, and when he's discourteous to her, she tells him off and walks away, at which point she discovers a portrait of a lady who looks exactly like the lady who was the face of the ambulance bot in Boom and other people that she and the Doctor have encountered this season. And apparently, she was the Duchess's husband's mother, the Duke's mother. When the guy from earlier causes a stir with a lady, Ruby follows he and the lady out of the room to see what develops, while the Doctor confronts the guy from whom the sonar signals seem to be coming, whose name is apparently Rogue, and they take things outside. Speaking of outside, the Duchess approaches a particular guest that apparently she's not fond of and gives her a hard time, causing her to go off in a huff, after which the Duchess seems to see one of her staff out in the yard, which she's not happy about. And when she confronts this person, the person reveals herself to be not exactly who she was pretending to be, and she replaces the Duchess, again leaving a withered corpse behind. Ruby witnesses a tiff between the imposter Lord from before and, it would seem, the sister of the other Lord, and that he's been fooling around with. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Rogue take a stroll and have a chat, whereupon the Doctor comes across the body of the Duchess. And it turns out that Rogue is also some kind of time traveler, and they both accuse the other of having killed the Duchess, at which point Rogue draws some kind of laser gun on the Doctor. Ruby comforts the woman from before, whose name is apparently Emily Beckett, and sloppily teaches her words that were not part of the English lexicon at the time, simply by using them in her speech, before they decide to go back to the gala for some cathartic dancing. It turns out that Rogue is a bounty hunter, and he tells the Doctor that he thinks the Doctor is a Chulder, a race of shapeshifters who roam the galaxy for the express purpose of engaging in their equivalent of cosplay, just for fun and the thrill of causing chaos among populations. He takes the Doctor to his cloaked ship, which is quite large. Back at the gala, Ruby and Emily are dancing, and the Duchess and the Lord from before have a little chat, and it turns out that the shapeshifter pretending to be the Duchess has designs on Ruby's form. Rogue traps the Doctor on a transport pad that will send him to an incinerator once it's charged, so the Doctor messes with him by using his sonic to trigger dance music inside the ship, and it was very funny, actually. Rogue then initiates a deep scan of the Doctor, and when he thinks he's proven that the Doctor is a shapeshifter, the Doctor uses his psychic paper wallet to push a button on Rogue's scanner by tossing it across the room. And this reveals all the Doctor's past forms, which I would have thought would only have convinced Rogue even further that he was a Chulder, but it doesn't. And he realizes that the Doctor is not one. Meanwhile, having danced a bit, Ruby continues to talk with Emily and tries to explain to her that women can do whatever they want. And as they're talking, they come across another body. The Doctor takes Rogue to the TARDIS, and after the Doctor starts to make it so that Rogue's ship will transport the shapeshifter that they're trying to catch far away, where it can't hurt anyone rather than kill it, he and Rogue talk about who Rogue lost in the past, which it would seem set him on his course, and it turns out that he lost his companion, at which point the Doctor tells him that he's lost everything. They almost share a lip lock after they each invite each other to travel with the other, but are interrupted by completion of the transformation of the transport pad. In order to draw out the Duchess, the Doctor and Rogue take to the dance floor before pretending to argue so that one of them can storm out in a huff to pique the Duchess's passion for scandal and cause her to follow. But Rogue gets down on one knee, seemingly to propose to the Doctor, and does in fact offer him a ring, at which point the Doctor says he can't, and then does indeed walk out as Rogue gives chase, causing the Duchess and the other guy to immediately want to be them. But it also causes the other shapeshifters who are also there, quite to the surprise of both Rogue and the Doctor, who thought there was only one shapeshifter present, to also want to be them, and they all give chase as we see that their true form is quite bird-like. Meanwhile, Emily is quite in shock at the revelation of the shapeshifters, at which point Ruby reveals to Emily that she's from the future. And plot twist, it turns out that Emily is also a shapeshifter and she tries to zap Ruby. The shapeshifters then take over the ballroom to the shock of all the guests, and Ruby and the Lord from the beginning are introduced as an engaged couple about to be married. The doctor realizes that Ruby's been gotten and goes to look for her body while having a flashback of promising her mother that she'd be okay. One of the shapeshifters takes on the guise of a vicar and begins to marry Ruby to the Lord from the beginning, at which point the doctor storms the proceedings. He traps the shapeshifters in the transport trap without realizing that Ruby is in fact still Ruby, before Ruby reveals that how she managed to get out was that she activated battle mode on the psychic earrings, which enabled her to like Matrix style download fight moves and get the better of the shapeshifter that was trying to take her form. After Rogue traps the remaining shapeshifter, who then storms the room, the one that tried to get Ruby, in the trap, the doctor has to make the choice to send Ruby along with them to oblivion because he can't shut off the trap and Ruby can't get out of it. Because he's overwhelmed by this, Rogue tries to comfort the doctor and they end up kissing, which is not the first time the doctor has been kissed by a male individual in male form, just so everyone knows.
Wish I'd never met you, Doctor. I was much better off as a coward. See you in hell.
Before Rogue replaces Ruby in the trap with himself and pushes the button, telling the doctor to find him before he's sent away with the shapeshifters, leaving the doctor quite verklempt. The doctor then sends Rogue's ship into orbit around the moon so it can wait for Rogue to be retrieved. And when Ruby realizes that the doctor's obviously only pretending to be okay, she tells him that it's okay to feel what he's feeling, and they have a hug. Before the episode ends, we see that the doctor still has the ring that Rogue gave him, and he puts it on before saluting his absent beloved. So again, I thought this was another classic one-off sci-fi meets fantasy episode of Doctor Who. I really, really enjoyed it. It just was a really excellent, non-serialized episode of wild and weird sci-fi. I really, really liked it. I continue to be amazed with the performance of Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor and with the very powerfully emotional version that he's playing, despite the fact that it's a bit of a departure from how the Doctor's been written and played before. Because, truth be told, I always wanted just that little bit more of emotionality from the Doctor than he'd been allowed to have as played previously. The Doctor always had his passionate moments, at least since the Eccleston era, but they were somewhat rare. Like, he was usually just very stoic and matter of fact, and sometimes he would like get upset and go off, but it was rare. Whereas this version of the Doctor is very, very emotional and very, very passionate. I keep saying he, but of course I'm including Jodie Whittaker in these statements, even though obviously that's when the Doctor was a woman. I suppose I should be saying they. Anyway, I absolutely loved the moment where it's revealed who the Doctor actually is. It was very well done and very powerful. I really liked it. I think the Rogue character is awesome, and I enjoyed seeing the Doctor fall for someone because, again, they never really showed that before and would only ever go like right up to that line, with the exception of River Song, whom the Doctor was in love with, though it never got super intense in terms of the way they played it. So I always wanted to see more passion between the Doctor and the people that they cared for. Romantic passion with Rose and Amy and Clara, for example. And even though they kind of stepped it up a little bit with the Doctor and Yaz during the Jodie Whittaker era, it was too little too late for me. They didn't really go there while her seasons were happening. The question now is, did they up the game a little bit too much? I don't know that I think they did just yet, and I'll have to see how I feel as this era of the Doctor continues and they presumably continue down the path that they're on with this more passionate Doctor, this more emotional Doctor, so we'll have to see. Another thing I loved was the bird people makeup. I thought it was very cool the way they made the aliens look like humanoid bird people. It was really wild. The only thing I didn't really like is that they seem now to be playing this Doctor as strictly gay based on dialogue, because he's always talking about or noticing how hot men are, but he never says it about women, which wasn't really the case with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, who we know or found out at the end of her run was in love with Yasmin, because at that point we knew that the Doctor had previously liked women. And they also didn't really have dialogue during Jodie's era that made it seem like she only liked women in that incarnation. And while they haven't come out and said it, that seems to be what they're doing. And I don't know that I like that versus the idea that the Doctor is omnisexual versus being either strictly gay or strictly straight, depending on their incarnation, because of the fact that they're a shape shifting ancient time traveler. But it's a small quibble. Because, like I said, I loved it overall because I've always wanted to see them go there, where the Doctor just totally goes for it with someone they're in love with. And they never really did that, at least since the Eccleston era. They had it where the Doctor was in a romance with her song, but it was very tepid, the way they depicted it. And the same is true for Jodie Whittaker and Yaz, which really only even came up at the end of her run and wasn't like handled at all during it, otherwise. But yeah, I really, really liked this episode. I think it is actually now the best one of the season, maybe tied with 73 Yards, which was a little bit better than Boom, which I also really liked a lot. So yeah, I'm a really happy Doctor Who fan these days. Now we've only got 2 episodes left in the season, so I'm bummed about that because I'd like to see the season go on longer so that we don't have to wait a whole bunch of time for more Doctor Who after the next 2 episodes. And because I know that once the next season comes, we're going to lose Ruby early on. And I really, really like Ruby. But at the same time, I'm looking forward to what they get up to in this 2-part season finale. So I'm conflicted. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here for now. I will be back, of course, to do a breakdown and review of the next episode once it's released. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.